This is the Architectural Review filmed round table. We're discussing Adelaide Wharf in Hackney, East London. And we're talking to the architect, Simon Alford of Alford Hall, Monaghan Morris. Simon, what was the biggest challenge when you looked at this dense inner city site and really you were being asked to do something innovative, a landmark, and make it very economic?
I suppose we've done a lot of work on economics before, so the big decisions was the strategic massing and layout on the site, and that was the big sort of driver. There was a little two-storey terrace, a remnant from the 80s, 1980s, sort of on the site, and it was how did we take an existing consent that set up certain rules and then reinvent it and move things on. And so we came up with this U-shaped courtyard, one side to the canal, one side to the street, and one side over Haggerston Park. Actually, that really made it a much more compact form than the existing consent that exists and allowed us to then take all the sort of advantage of that onto the detail of the project. So it was really the strategic massing that was the big challenge. And I have to say, as Elliot said, we worked very well with Hackney, but when we all go on site now, we all say it could probably take another 2 stories. But this was the first one, so everyone was being a bit more cautious. But it was that really liberated it, because we're not actually impacting negatively on anyone.
And how did you decide which block should house which sort of tenants or purchasers?
Interesting enough, the canal has historically canals, water, the idea of leisure and luxury. So the agents were terribly keen that the private was on the north side overlooking the canal, which meant we were all equally keen that the affordable was on the south side overlooking Haggerston Park with views of the city. So it was actually one of those very happy coincidences where their perception of value and our perception as value as a team were slightly different. And we all believe that the affordable get the best aspect.
Now, one of the striking features of this project is clearly the balconies, which work as a form of decoration for the building and obviously as a kind of delightful amenity for the tenants. Why are they so prominent?
When we were working on the project, all of us together early on, one of the key things was where can you really add value to someone? Now we've got a shared courtyard, we've got a children's playground, we've got a park nearby, we've got a canal, but actually for the individuals within their apartments, the idea of on a sunny day, be able to break out of your internal world, however generous we could make it, break out of that and go into an external world where you're sort of, you're on view, but you're in the sun, you're outdoors. We all set that up as a key driver to the project, that we had to make something special and different. It gives us huge architectural devices on the street, which is fantastic, and colour and orientation. But the main thing was, it actually gives really good amenity, and you can put families higher up. The balconies are 4 square metres for the smaller flats, but up to 12 square metres for the big flats. So they really are outside rooms. And we all felt too much money and time is invested in, say, kitchens and bathrooms. We want to do them well, but actually people can always upgrade that. They can't add in this kind of scheme. They can't add space. So get volume right, give generous, balconies, and suddenly you've got a project that's really able to survive over time, wherever space standards take us.
I think it's important to also point out that actually Adelaide is a relatively simple building, and part of the economies that we were talking about earlier are because the shape of the building is very simple. We have gone for a beautiful facade, but the balconies actually provide some of the visual differentiation on the street that takes it from a rather bland building to being a fantastic celebration of the joy that new housing can bring.
In terms of space, one of the readers of the review of this project in the Architectural Review noted that, relatively speaking, the living room space is pretty similar, however many bedrooms there are in the flat. Was there a decision to have a sort of trade-off where actually the larger size balconies were a sort of compensation for the fact that you might not get more living room space in a 3-bedroom unit than a 1-bed?
You do actually get more. I mean, they are technically different, and they are more generous in the larger flats. However, I think there is an idea actually that rather than people talk about the living room, but actually that's how we label buildings. It's a slightly dumb interpretation. What we looked at was actually saying the bedrooms should do more than one thing. The bedroom should also be a place where kids can study. You know, in a modern world, you don't want everyone in the living room. So we tried to rethink the idea that the bedrooms were multi-purpose rooms, so there wasn't so much pressure. So although we've given differentiation, we've actually said the bedrooms must be usable, not just to sleep in. And we've also created these interlocking doors so that actually the living room can borrow from the bedroom and you get a through flow. So in a sense, a bit like this Georgian room we're in, you're not imagining that the rooms are so tailored to use. And I think that was a kind of the important balance we made there. The balconies are pure bonus in that sense.
Yeah. I suppose the other frequently asked question about contemporary apartments in Britain is the desirability of single aspect units. Now, most architects do not want single aspect apartments, and in fact, people go for doubles all the time. This is something of great contention, and I wonder how you address that particular dilemma at Adelaide.
I think, you know, in terms of the sort of density we are looking at, you know, we moved down to the corridor solution. We have one idea is that the balconies, by being such large rooms themselves, break you out if you're not looking just one way. Your balcony is the extra room, and then with your balcony you get three aspects. Yeah. In terms of the technology of ventilation and sunlight, we're fine, it all works. I think inevitably, we talked about the grammar of these kind of systems we developed. Part of the grammar that we need to continuously work on and refine, and I think that's happening in the next project that First Space are working on, is, you know, looking maybe at the mansion flat rather than the corridor, which gives you some potential for a different way of using space, and it gives you more easily potential for through flats. However, space and size standards still make through flats quite lavish, and they're still technically quite difficult to achieve as you look at efficiency. So it's always a trade-off, but I think it's a trade-off we need to get better and better at doing.
Your corridors are glazed at the end.
They're glazed, they're
which
triple
is
height
important.
at certain points. You've always got a window at the end. They're interrupted by some of our courts. We have double height rooms that cut through them. So as much as possible, we try to animate, change and differentiate the corridors. But I think, you know, that idea of the common parts, we also developed you know, a main point of reception, as Elliot said, with a concierge management of the whole block. We work with, you know, local artists who's now become quite eminent, Richard Woods, on a piece of art. We looked at the staircase, learning from Lebetkin's projects. We're not stacking stair upon stair, we've twisted them so that you're getting light and double height volumes. We're bringing light into reception. So I think we cracked those major elements, and the next area to crack in the next suite of projects will be further refining the idea of from the common parts to your flat. Can you eradicate or reduce the length and impact of the corridor?
I suppose the other unusual, or another unusual thing about this project is the shared courtyard space, because it's one thing to have different tenures next to each other, but this is a social situation where this is a completely shared open space. Was there any ever suggestion that actually that should be limited to one group or another group?
The only limitations that were ever thought and which do exist in a kind of relaxed way is that the through flats at the ground floor actually have wheelchair access, little private courts off that court. And in fact, the shared courtyard is a great London tradition. If you looked at the built estates of the 19th century in West London, Ladbroke Grove, Notting Hill, etc., you get the little private patio onto the shared courtyard, and that's, you know, it's a great facility. And actually another benefit for the open U is the noise of children and play is not necessarily the noise all residents want to hear, but the openness of the block allows that to escape. So really it was always seen by all of us that it was the kind of thing that made it a place where you live. And actually we wanted everyone to enjoy the courtyard. So when they enter via the 2 points of entry, the 2 cuts into the block, you see the courtyard, you enjoy the private green, and indeed in discussion with Hackney, even the passers-by glimpse into the courtyard. So it's rather a nice, it's also an ancient model, Peabody model from the 19th century, you know, private courtyards, except they weren't landscaped, so we could just sort of move it on a bit.
Now, it's something actually, it's a question for you and for Elliot, because it's got management implications. It's long been the case in social housing that anyone can walk into an estate and go anywhere they want, and people have different views about whether that's desirable or not. This is very definitely a place where whatever your tenure is, I mean, this is private. I mean, if you don't live there, you can't just walk into that courtyard and you can't just